Montana, it's not Atlanta. We don't have the Jewish amenities that you guys have. And I know every Chabad house has its own challenges. But when I was sitting and having lunch with Chavi back in 2009 at a local park, we were having a lunch picnic. We didn't have any kids at the time. And here's rule number one: you don't pick up the phone. You don't pick up your phone when you're having lunch with your wife unless you want that lunch to come to an end. But I was immature and naive, and I answered the phone. And there was a guy on the phone. His name was David. He says, "Rabbi, this is David calling from Great Falls, which is 3 hours north of Bozeman. Our dad," he's talking about his father, Zali, he just slipped into a coma. He was an old man. And when he passes, we want you to do the funeral." Now, I think subconsciously, I had never prepared a Jewish body for burial. I'm very good with living people, but dealing with deceased people was not my cup of tea. And so I think because of that subconscious, I said to David, I said, if I'm going to do this funeral, it's going to be like super duper Orthodox. I'm going to rip your clothing. I made it sound like the most horrific event was about to go down. And after my whole speech, he said, "Rabbi, Daddy loves you. So whatever you got to do, you'll do." So my whole thing didn't work. So for the next 36 hours, I spent on the phone with members of the Chevra Kadisha in LA, in New York, members of the Holy Burial Society to train me via phone how to prepare a Jewish body for burial. And Thursday morning that week, I drove up 4 o'clock in the morning. I left the house up to Great Falls, and I prepared Zali's body for burial. When rabbis show up at funerals, generally they look all faputs. They have their suit, their tie. They prepared a beautiful eulogy. They sat with the family. They're ready to knock it out of the park. At Zali's funeral, there was an uncertainty in the room who the deceased person was. Was it Zali or was it the rabbi standing there? Because that's how I felt. I'm pretty sure that's how I looked after spending 3 hours in the morgue dealing with Zali, right? The Eibishter, God always blesses me that the people that I do preparation for burial are, let's just say, larger than I am. And so it's a big operation. But driving home from Great Falls that night, I came to a recognition, this is pretty early on in my work, that what the Rebbe did here was incredible. That Zali Kelman, who was far from a religious Jew, and actually made sure I should know that every time we met. But when he passed away, he was buried exactly the way a Jew should be, because the Lubavitcher Rebbe in New York entrusted ambassadors of light to be in every corner of the world to deal both with simchas, with exciting moments of Jewish life, but also sometimes with the not so happy moments of life. One of those exciting moments was in 2011, I got a call from a Jewish woman in LA, and before she could say anything, I picked up the phone, she started crying. Now, I could handle crying. I'm from a family in Chabad. We're not known for our emotion. I'm much better now, thanks to my wife, Chavi, but we weren't very good at listening to your emotional stuff. Talk to me. What do you want? Get to the point. But she's crying. So after a couple minutes, I said, "Lady, you got to tell me what's going on. I can't just spend all day listening to you cry." So she said, "Rabbi, my son, who's 12 years old, Michael, is at a youth treatment center in Helena, Montana, which is our capital, an hour and a half northwest of us. And he's supposed to have this big ritzy glitzy bar mitzvah in LA coming up in a couple months. And now I realize he's in this treatment center. He's never going to have his proper bar mitzvah." So without even a long conversation, I said, "I don't understand, Terry. Why don't we just make the bar mitzvah in Helena? We'll find a conference room. There are no ballrooms. We'll find a conference room in a hotel. We'll get a minyan together. I'll bring a Torah. I'll bring kosher breakfast. Invite all his cousins to come to Helena. Michael will have his bar mitzvah in Helena." And it was like, it threw her off. She didn't think it was possible. And lo and behold, 2 months later, look at me. I'm not a guy that does, I wouldn't fit very well on Dancing with the Stars. It's not my cup of tea. But that morning in Helena, I felt like I was dancing with the stars. I danced like a crazy person. For an hour, we celebrated this incredible simcha where a Jewish boy his parents thought that he'd never be able to have a proper bar mitzvah the way they envisioned. I would venture to say he had a way more proper bar mitzvah, a more holy bar mitzvah, a more mitzvah observant bar mitzvah than it would have been in LA. And that's again because of that incredible vision that the Rebbe had. And so in 2012, when I got a call from Ramona, who isn't Jewish, and her husband Sheldon came to our Rosh Hashanah services on the second day for 10 minutes one time, because he lived primarily in Maryland and had a second home in Montana. She calls me and says, "Rabbi, Sheldon just drowned on the Boulder River." Montana, I don't want to offend anyone in Georgia, but we are the fly fishing capital of America. And he was fly fishing. He was standing in his waders, and sometimes waders malfunction. And we don't know who started drowning first, but the fishing guide and him both drowned in the process. So after 10 minutes of talking to Ramona, I said, "Ramona, where's Sheldon's body?" She goes, "Oh, the coroner in Billings took the body." I said, "For what? It wasn't foul play. We know in Montana when it's foul play. It's very rare. This was a drowning accident." She goes, "I don't know. Call the coroner." So, you have to sometimes hope that God puts the right words in your mouth. And I have a lot of chutzpah, but that morning, I still don't know to this very day where the words came from. Hashem literally planted it in my mouth, and that's what came out. I called the coroner's office. I'd never met her. It was a woman. I never met her before. I never spoke to her before. She picked up the phone. I said, and these are the words that came out of my mouth. My name is Rabbi Chaim from Bozeman. With the power invested in me by God Almighty, I prohibit you from touching Sheldon's body. Then I paused and realized that this may not go well. I don't know. And she responded as follows with a semi-stutter. Rabbi, what would you like me to do with the body? I said, we're sending a hearse from Bozeman. We'll be there in 3 hours. We'll take it from here. Thanks for your efforts. And that was the end of the conversation. They never did the autopsy. We stopped this Jew who had a tragic accident from experiencing an autopsy. And these are the type of things that when we stand at the forefront of Jewish life, this is not something that someone in a boardroom can figure out what to do. You have to be living in the community with the people, celebrating the exciting moments of life, mourning the tragic moments of life, but being there with them as one of them. When USY, the United Synagogue Youth from the conservative movement, had 63 campers in Yellowstone National Park, and FedEx was supposed to deliver them their kosher dinner. And guess what? FedEx lost the boxes. It's not just, they don't only lose your boxes, they lost boxes for an entire summer camp. And FedEx called us and said, we need kosher dinner tonight for 63 Jewish campers. We said yes, except we were naive. I told FedEx it would cost them $1,300. If I knew then what I know now, it would have been $13,000, but that was my mistake back then. I was naive and silly. But the bottom line is 63 campers who are not by any means Chabad. They're not even Orthodox. They're conservative, and it wasn't relevant. We didn't even know who the recipients were until 2 weeks later when we got a postcard in the mail telling us, thanking us for getting them kosher dinner. Because that's what Jews do for each other, and you can only do that if you're on the front line. Yeah, sure, Atlanta sounds like a much bigger city, but we all know, anyone on this Zoom knows, and I don't have to be in Atlanta to know, that the action, the primary Jewish communities, the big shuls and temples in Atlanta are not in town. They're in other parts of Atlanta. When the shuls moved to in-town, that's not where it was happening, but they made it happen. That's what we do. When El Al landed a plane in Billings, an emergency landing in 2015, imagine 319 Jews on a plane. Naturally, after 14 hours of flying, they were all starving. I'm sure they had no food in those 14 hours that they were on the flight. And when they landed in Billings, there was a big emergency. And the emergency was, how are we going to get food to these starving Jews that haven't eaten already in 15 minutes? And so the rabbi of El Al called, I was out of town. Chavi took our 3 kids, we had 3 children at the time, loaded up the car with a full minivan of everything we had in the freezer, cold cuts and rugelach and cakes, and went to Walmart. We had Pasi Stroll bagels here, and loaded up and brought it to them. And the excitement when she walked into the Billings airport, it was like Queen Esther showed up. You know what I mean? They thought like they won the lottery. And I realized that even though, yes, the Jews are obsessed with food for whatever reason, that wasn't what they were actually excited about. What they were excited about was that they're part of a family that is there for each other no matter what's going on. And that is something that there is no other Jewish organization in the world that can compete with that. They don't even try. They compete with programs. They try to replicate what we do. They can never replicate who we are because we have a Rebbe that ingrained in us a certain way of seeing the world and dealing with the world that is unbeatable. Same reason why I have issues with organizations that should remain unnamed, but I'm sure you know they are, who spend their whole day looking for anti-Semites. If a school principal in Colorado says something insensitive to a Jew, there's Jewish organizations that right away they defame the person, they humiliate the person. What are you doing? Go talk to the person. They probably didn't say it because they hate Jews. They probably said it because they're ignorant. The majority of people in Montana are not haters. They just never met a Jew before. When I see someone in the grocery looking at me, right, with that look, you're like, oh, what is that? So I walk up to them. I don't do it in COVID because it's a little, because of the 6 feet. But before COVID, it was a blast. You'd be in Walmart, walk straight up to them and go, I'm Jewish. You look a little confused. I'm Jewish. Like one guy in the Helena gas station said to me one time, I've never met one of your kind before. So I said, fantastic. One of my kind. Now he's met one of my kind. It's an incredible opportunity to change minds. You don't beat anti-Semitism by tweeting against every anti-Semite. You change the world by interacting with the Gentile community, by uplifting the Rebbe didn't send me to Montana and Chavi to Montana just to deal with the 5,000 Jews spread across Big Sky country. He sent us here because we need to be a beacon of light for all people. And it's a little harder when you're in a minority of a minority of a minority. but it's so much fun and has such an incredible impact. Last night at our menorah lighting, I would bet 75% of the people weren't Jewish. But there's a menorah lighting downtown. You're going to celebrate light in the public domain. Why don't we come together to celebrate? And so it was back in 2008. It was our first, I think it was our first or second menorah lighting at the governor's, at the state capitol in Helen. And I walk in and a Jew walks up to me and says, hey, Rabbi, do you speak Hebrew? I probably normally in a normal place, I'd probably get offended. Montana, the guy doesn't know if the rabbi speaks Hebrew. I said, yes, I speak Hebrew. He said, there's an officer here in the police department that wants to talk to you. I said, okay. So I had a few minutes. I walk up. He says, his name is Sergeant Fasquet. He says, Rabbi, we got a dog here for the state capitol. It's a bomb sniffing dog that's here. I don't know why they need a bomb sniffing dog in Montana. Everyone's armed to the kazoos over here. I have no idea, but they got one. What they didn't know was the dog was trained in Israel in Hebrew. And so for 6 months, they've been trying to talk to this dog. And yeah, they gave them a sheet of paper that had the commands, but they can never pronounce these words. So he says, do you mind spending a few minutes? So yeah, sure. So for a couple of minutes, I sat there and I said, Shev, Amod, sit down, stand up. I'm sitting here talking to a dog. One of the Jews working in the Capitol loved this whole idea. He wrote an article for the New York Times. The Times didn't print it in 2008. A year later, in 2009, the Times must have ran out of what to print. So they print this op-ed by Eric Stern. And I want to just read, you can Google it later, but I want to just read you the last two paragraphs of this article. And really emphasizes this idea that when we interact with our neighbors in the community, it creates incredible positive vibes, holy vibes. The article went like this. So all is well in the Jewish community here because the Hasidic rabbi is helping the Montana cop speak Hebrew to his dog. It's good news all around. The officer keeps the Capitol safe and the Hebrew pooch is feeling more at home hearing his native tongue. But the big winner is the rabbi, a recent arrival from Brooklyn who is working hard against tough odds to bring his Lubavitch movement to Montana. He's been scouring the state for anyone who can speak Hebrew and is elated to have found a German shepherd he can talk to. That's how the article concluded. And I think that really epitomizes what we do. And not only what we do, but who we are. We are a group of people that wake up every morning not asking ourselves what we have to gain by being a rabbi and rebbitzin during COVID, but what are we going to offer the community? What are we going to offer in sense of solace and joy and experience of the community that doesn't exist out there? It's about the qualitative experience. It's never, if it was about quantity, you think I'd be living in Montana? Never. And so I like to think that for 3,000 years since Sinai, God had it really rough because people thought of religion as a very negative thing. And then the Rebbe of blessed memory introduced an incredible marketing team to finally give religion and Judaism the treatment that it deserves, which is an incredible thing. So whether it's Chavi and I adopting 5 children and turning a negative experience of infertility into a very positive experience, which maybe one day she'll come to speak for your community and share that more in depth. But it's not a novel idea. It's something that we are taught. It's our bread and butter. And my message to you is, as I conclude and Chavi goes over to doing her Tanya class, is that when you ask yourself, where is the best bang for my buck? There is no Jew. I say this unequivocally. I have no shame in saying it. There is no one, not in the Jewish world, not in the secular world, that has offered humanity what Chabad has offered and what Chabad continues to offer despite the pandemic. We are here not only as a shoulder to cry on and a place to celebrate. We are here as a family, and we've created this family both within the Jewish community and the greater human community. And with that, I wish you a wonderful Hanukkah, and I wish you all an incredible upcoming secular year of 2021, in which you recognize that whatever you did for Chabad last year. No, by the way, Rabbi Schuster didn't ask me to say this. I say this to Bozeman as well. But you really need to ask yourself, where can I make the greatest change in the world? And the answer is at Chabad of InTown and all their incredible programs. And if you have leftover after that, just think of Chabad of Montana. I'm just throwing it out there for fun. Have a wonderful Hanukkah. And it's great meeting you guys. And once COVID is over, there are direct flights, Delta, Atlanta to Bozeman. So if you're smart, you'll come visit with us. Sei gesund, and we'll see you guys soon.